Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops in harm's way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So prior to the official public session, we had an executive session, which we recessed, and so we will pick that up after the close of the public session. For chairperson's remarks, please let the record reflect that all Portsmouth School Committee members are present, as well as our Little Compton representative with the now official nameplate. Congratulations. If we do have an emergency, we have 3 exit doors and we will meet over at the school administration building. Just a quick update, Monday night, a week ago Monday, we had the Bond Community Forum. Not a lot of community members were present, but we did have a few. But I think it was a good thing to have because it was taped and it is available for viewing on the school department website. I haven't checked it out, but I think it's been posted, correct? Community questions were asked and hopefully answers were up there. For the RIASC meeting update, I'd like to ask Mr. Vadney, who represented the school committee at that yesterday, to give the report, please.
Okay, I attended the RIASC meeting on behalf of the chair, which is teaching, working for a living. And what we have here, the first topic of discussion was about COVID protocols and changes that RIASC and the DOH has made in between, talking, about kids with one major symptom, 2 minor symptoms. And one of the changes that they added that the nurses can use their own best judgment. Is that something that they be related to an ongoing allergy, or this is something unique? So I'm glad to see that flexibility. Then they had then they started talking about mandating vaccinations for the kids, and RIDE said that this is something that the school departments cannot do. You do not have authority to mandate vaccinations. That is something done by the Department of Health. Then they went on to the state mandate regarding green curriculum, and right now it's in math, ELA, science. And then they got into a debate exactly what was curriculum and who did it. And basically, it's the schools that do the curriculum. They provide essentially the mandate and the frameworks and stuff, but they do not do curriculum. There's a big debate. And then they talked about some of the RICAS results. They didn't get into numbers. They were just noting that they had got them all together. And yes, there was a downward trend. And then a brief discussion on ESSER 3. And again, that didn't really get into technical issues because our RIDE had done meeting about that the previous week with the administrators. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. And we're not at public comment yet.
I want to ask questions about this item that you just finished.
Yeah, can we?
It's only out of order if the school committee chooses to do it.
But there's no comment, it's just a report that's.
Yeah, this is just a report out from RIDE meetings. It's not an actually agenda thing. Okay.
The law doesn't even require that we have public comment, so.
No, but we have public comment, but we can.
Have it on here later on.
Right. So if you could just hold it for just a second, we'll get through the chairperson's remarks here. And then I'd like to ask Ms. McDade, our CLAC representative, to report out from the CLAC Advisory Committee meeting.
Sure, thank you. There was a CLAC committee meeting on Wednesday the 20th. And most of the evening was spent with a very informative presentation from Amanda Madore, who was talking about mental health issues, including a lot of resources that were available both within the district and outside the district for parents So if there are parents watching who are looking for information around those issues, there are a lot of references on the website, on the district website, or you can talk with the guidance counselors or mental health providers within the district, and there was a lot of really helpful information available that way. At the end of the meeting, Dr. Kenworthy was there, and we talked briefly about the bond issue that was coming up. There were not a lot of questions from the parents. I think we've done a good job of making sure that everybody's familiar with the issues. And so that was the gist of the meeting.
Great, thank you for representing us on that. Moving on to subcommittee updates, health and wellness, Ms. Kelly.
We had our first health and wellness subcommittee meeting of the school year on October 14th, Thursday. We got an update from all the schools, including that the elementary schools are going to be having Unity Week, which is part of the anti-bullying campaign. The halfway fun run was upcoming, which actually it's still upcoming because it was postponed due to the rain. The middle school reported that fall sports seasons was wrapping up and all the teams are going to the playoffs, and there were over 100 athletes participating. And the high school reported that Spirit Week had just finished, and the last part of that then is going to be the homecoming dance, which is this Friday. Then we got an update from Colwell, which provides the meals in school. And they're still following the emergency meal program. So they're offering breakfast and lunch at no cost to all students. And they're really doing their best to focus on local food options as much as possible. The representative mentioned that, for instance, local apples were offered in school on October 6th, which is really great. And the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition mentioned that this past Tuesday was the annual breakfast for school wellness leaders. And some of us were in attendance there, which was a really great opportunity to learn about what's going on in the state. And our next meeting is December 9th.
Great, thank you very much. Moving on to recognitions, Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to let Mr. Emerald come up to give out this certificate this evening, but we wanted to take the opportunity to recognize Maria Kick, senior at Portsmouth High School. So recently, the National Merit Scholar semifinalists were announced. So this emanates from the PSAT exam that students typically take in their junior year. It's estimated that about 1.5 million students across the nation take this exam each year, and then this award recognizes the top 1%. So Maria is down into 16,000 other semifinalists throughout the country, and the decision will then continue, and Maria will find out whether she moves on to the finalist round. One thing worth noting this year is that Maria is the only National Merit semifinalist in high schools in all of Whitney Island. So, yeah, congratulations.
I think they're going to want another picture. Well, I know you've been congratulated by the principal, the superintendent, and on behalf of the school committee and all the residents of Portsmouth, congratulations. It's not easy to do that. Well deserved. So, nice job. All right. Thank you very much. If you need to go, feel free, you know, or you can stay for the whole meeting as you wish. Oh, okay. Bye. Busy lives. All right. Now we have time for public comment. Are there any questions or comments? Welcome.
Very good, speaking for support. Thank you very much. I have only simple questions about the Rhode Island Association of School Committees. I'd like to have some understanding of how much this thing costs us to join. I'm assuming that there is an annual cost associated with membership. Is that correct?
Yes, but remember, public comment is where you ask the questions and then we can't necessarily respond when it's on public comment unless
Madam
it's,
Chair, that's an interesting procedure, because you're denying me the opportunity to speak at the first part of this thing on the subject. Now you deny yourselves an opportunity to answer, which, by the way, is not legal. There's no legal requirement.
So there's a requirement to have also comment.
About 2 or 3 attorney generals back, one of them wrote an opinion on this.
that we can comment on comment.
Madam Chair, first of all, it's your policy that a public comment is simply that, comments from the public. Not only is the way you handle it legal, you do not even have to have public comments
We will.
because it's very clear in the Open Meeting Act that it's optional. You can also limit any kind of discussion or any additional information on public comment. This committee has chosen not to allow any kind of response, and that has been the policy that you followed for years.
Okay. We'll be happy to get back to it with maybe outside the public comment. So,
Well, I'll put this matter on the agenda next time around. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, PHS liaison communication. Do we have our liaison?
So I do not believe I could not make it tonight. I wasn't really sure.
Okay, well, they're there. We're on the agenda if we want to. Moving on to the superintendent's update. Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you. So first up is a personnel update since our last meeting. We did welcome 2 additional employees since that time, both our bus monitors, Renee Chapman and Kate Santos. I did approve 2 leave of absence, leave without pays, Bridget Auclair, special educator at Melville, and Stacy Delecta, also special educator at Melville. And I did accept with regret a resignation of a longtime staff member, Laura Kamara, who has been a social studies teacher at Portsmouth Middle School.
Are we filling that last position with as a sub, long-term sub for the rest of the year?
Yes, we had somebody in the position already as a long-term sub. We will look to now fill it permanently. We were waiting on some information from Mrs. Kamara.
Okay,
Moving on to district updates. If there are no other questions since our last meeting. First up is a COVID-19 update. So Portsmouth as a community does continue to fluctuate between high and moderate transmission in the RIO municipal case data. Today in the district, we have had a total of 41 positive cases since the opening of the school year. These include 16 cases at Portsmouth High School, 12 cases at Portsmouth Middle School, 10 at Melville, and 3 at Hathaway. This Friday, October 29th, the town of Portsmouth will be running a Pfizer vaccine clinic at the PHS Fieldhouse from 3 to 7 p.m. First dose, second dose, and boosters will be available. While signups are encouraged, walk-ins will be accommodated as long as there are available doses. As many people are probably aware, the CDC has recently authorized mixing and matching for booster doses. And at this time, just an update, there is not a plan to continue with the municipal clinic format for the 5 to 11-year-old vaccines once they become eligible, as we anticipate in the next few weeks. There are some additional requirements with that age group for municipal clinics, and at this time, the town of Portsmouth does not think that that's going to be the best method. So the vaccines will be available through local pediatrician offices and other sites, and there's still some questions as to whether there may be some opportunities with RIDO working with us in schools. The Equity Institute has started their data collection phase of the equity analysis. Surveys have gone out to district staff and administrators, including school committee members and parents and family members. Each school is working on a schedule for survey administration, which will go to students in grades 3 through 12, with the opportunity for parents to opt their students out of the survey. For this process, surveys will remain open through the Thanksgiving break, and within that time frame as well, we will begin to schedule additional focus groups for other stakeholder groups. Our staff focus group did occur last Friday on our staff PD day. So that, and just an update, that analysis is underway. As Mrs. Kelly reported on Tuesday, October 19th, I attended the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition annual breakfast meeting along with Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Piero, Dr. Viveros, and several members of our district health and wellness committee. The event was held in a large outdoor tent at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Warwick, and participants were treated to a healthy breakfast from local food sources and heard updates from state and local officials on the latest health and wellness initiatives. While the event is always well attended, there were probably more people than I've seen in a while there. I think people were just happy to be able to be out at a safe. Dr. Viveros and I have recently wrapped up luncheon meetings with the staff of each of our 4 schools. These have been great opportunities for us to check in informally with the hardworking educators in each of our buildings. Portsmouth High School homecoming dance is scheduled for this weekend. I was there watching the weather, and as it is scheduled to be an outdoor event. You may have seen U.S. News and World Report, which has been annually ranking high schools across the nation for several years, recently released its first ever rankings for elementary and middle schools. This methodology is heavily weighted on math and reading proficiency on the last state assessment scores available. So in this case, these were based on 2018-19 ICAS data. Melville ranked 23, while Hathaway ranked 56 out of 164 total Rhode Island elementary schools. And Portsmouth Middle School ranked 15 out of 60 Rhode Island middle schools. This afternoon, Dr. Viveros and I, and I Newton's weekday as well, attended an informational session at the Rhode Island Department of Education regarding the release of state assessment data from last spring. That data is scheduled to be publicly released later this week, and we anticipate a presentation on our district results at our next school committee meeting. We are still awaiting on the official release of ESSER 3 of the ESSER 3 application. We will be putting out a survey to the PSD community in the coming days to gather feedback for these priority areas. As a reminder, we are anticipating an allocation of approximately $2 million, which will be targeted for these specific areas over the next several school years. And lastly, a reminder that for the months of November, December, and January, we will move to one school committee meeting each of those months. In January, we will have our annual budget kickoff meeting with town council, and then resume our regular bi-monthly school committee meeting schedule in February, when we will begin our FY23 budget discussions.
Mr. Ferber.
I have a question and a comment. The question is an obvious one. What are we going to do if the homecoming dance is canceled because of the weather? Because it looks like it's going to be pretty bad.
And so it looks like it's scheduled for Friday, I believe. I assume if weather is an issue there, we will look to Saturday, if that's not a possibility.
No, we met with the student council today, and we checked out various options, but on Saturday, some of our sports teams have made it to the next round of the playoffs, which becomes a little bit of a hindrance. Our band is also was invited to participate in the competition in neighboring Connecticut that lasts from 8 to 9 at night. Plus, we're going to get torrential rains on Saturday.
Yeah, I was just going to say, regardless of all of that, the rain, we're still going to get washed out anyway.
Yes, so the alternative to Friday is not going to go on. The student council executive board decided that November 19th, we had next optional date. And we also explored other open area events. I don't think there's one place in Newport County we don't know. We even visited the airport hangar as an option. Literally, we did. We checked out, I probably think that we probably checked out 12 to 13 sites that can accommodate this many students. But I think we're confident that the football field is probably the best, most economical way to provide a dance opportunity for students.
I think you said when you last spoke about this at the meeting, you said that all the tent places are closed for the season. You can't rent a tent.
Yeah, we went as far, and I don't want to bore you with the details, but we went as far as going across into a stationary tent that's happening in Warwick.
at the Crown Plaza, which has a 10.
Yeah, I read that, right.
That's right. So they're coming down this weekend.
Oh,
The tent's coming down for the season. They won't be put back up in May. So I say we explore every possible that we bring to keep the dream alive of the homecoming dance. We are, and we're not going to give up until we get that opportunity. And one of our neighboring districts of our similar size has indefinitely postponed their homecoming dance, but we're hoping that we don't have to do that.
yeah, well, fingers crossed. That'll,
And then my comment is US News and World Report, I believe that was the source, ranked the states, the educational systems of the states. I couldn't believe it. Rhode Island's ranked 39th out of 50.
Yeah, I didn't see the state ranking.
Yeah, it's, I mean, every other New England state is ranked well above Rhode Island. It's not even close. And that was, I mean, it doesn't, we don't account for that 39th ranking, but it's still pretty depressing. The state isn't, is so far below even neighbor states.
when you do the RICAS presentation, I think it would be really interesting to not only compare to our normal sort of, Barrington, et cetera, but maybe look at a couple of the neighboring Massachusetts town. Because I remember hearing, I think it was like 2 years ago, pre-COVID, where they were saying, if we looked at sort of the comparative data between, I think it was Portsmouth and Somerset, is that what I'm remembering there? That, we hear these sort of Rhode Island's way down in the ranking, but if you sort of look at where Portsmouth is compared to the Massachusetts ones, it's pretty similar in some ways, it's what I understand.
Did they take MCAS last year?
They did, but I'm not sure if they've been released yet, but I can look into that.
I know they did. Yeah, I know they did.
Yeah, they did.
So I think Rhode Island actually did better than,
Massachusetts actually did a limited MCAS, so they didn't have all the testing that they ordinarily would have, but they still have scores that they're reporting.
We'll definitely look at it, just a little preview. As it was mentioned several times today, this data from last year is not going to count for accountability. There was too much not a typical testing year with number of students on full distance learning for the entire year.
and I just kind of curious with the gap between 23 and 56 for Melville and Hathaway. Do we know what that's based on? I mean,
Yeah, so when I looked at the methodology a little bit, it's heavily for those elementary middle schools just based on state assessment data. So it's a 2018-19 RICAS data.
I didn't think they were that far apart. Okay, other questions? No? All right, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm going back and forth with the agenda here. Come on. There we go. All right. Moving on to presentations. Our first one is on COVID-19 coordination and testing.
So we have two presentations this evening. First one is on COVID-19 coordination and testing. We had mentioned at the last meeting, we were going to have this presentation this evening, just to provide an update on, there were a lot of changes right at the beginning of the school year, and even as the school year has unfolded around everything that goes into our procedures. So Dr. Colwell, as a reminder, oversees our district nursing staff. Mrs. Marnis is our COVID-19 coordinator, so they have worked together on this presentation. Turn it over to them.
Hi, good evening. So tonight, Mrs. Alvarez is going to actually give you the slide. She's our medical professional. But I really just wanted to acknowledge all of the work that she's been doing. Since COVID started and Dr. Kenworthy made a really great decision on behalf of the district to have somebody focus just on COVID management in the district and working with the schools. Mrs. Alvarez has been there from the beginning. This year, over the summer, as the variant began to really amp up, we were at first thinking maybe, we could kind of resume normal operations, very similar to the way that many people thought. And clearly, as the variant started to ramp up, we decided otherwise, and Mrs. Alvarez was there for us again. And again, with the support of, Dr. Kenworthy acknowledging this. She has again been in this role and has been serving in this role and certainly has not been short on managing COVID, everything COVID for the district. So I'm going to turn things over to her. She's going to talk about 2 things tonight. She's going to talk about where our procedures are and where we are with testing as well. So I'll turn things over to her.
I agree. Certainly, COVID has presented its challenges in schools, as everyone is well aware. And much of the time, even at the bridal meetings, people will say, "Been building the plane as we're flying the plane." So things do change, and beginning of this year was no different. I participate, many of us, Dr. Colwell and Kenworthy, all participate in meetings with the pod from around Department of Health weekly, and I have direct communication with people. That was one of the benefits of my Zoom positions, because I made contacts last year at Friday, and those contacts continue to benefit the school. Responding to positive COVID student cases has changed a little bit. We are now moving away from quarantine classrooms, and we're using a HALO quarantine criteria, which allows us to allow more children to stay in school. The HALO exception, there are HALO exceptions. We have had to quarantine for classrooms. But that's based on individual assessments and who tests positive, the position of the student or the positive individual in the classroom. Those factors all come into play when we are deciding who's quarantining the numbers. My focus has always been, our health focus has been to keep as many kids in school. We have moved to a 3-foot model on the bus. They were putting out like incredible numbers of students on buses. And this is actually, and lunch and recess is also made up. As of just today, I discovered that at the October 22nd meeting, the Rhino meeting, they said that there's going to be a government's going to issue a new executive order, and it's expected to be signed to order contact tracing will no longer be required for school buses at all. So that's great. Or at any or at recess with some conditions, and they didn't really spell out what those conditions are yet. But that's a real improvement for kids in school. We can't implement it at all until the new executive order is signed, and a new write-up paper is anticipated to be released very soon with more specifics. We are testing in schools. There are 2 types of COVID testing going on in schools right now. We're doing symptomatic testing and asymptomatic testing. Approximately 50% of the Portsmouth families have consented to school-based testing. Asymptomatic testing is now being done with pool testing and individual PCRs, which means that the student's swabbed, it goes in the pool, and they test the pool media. There are 6 swabs in there. If the pool media is positive, then they go back and look at each student's individual test and determine which student is positive. Symptomatic testing, we begin with a Minex test. If the Minex test is negative, we then move on to a PCR test. If Minex is positive, then the student is sent home. Students are sent home if they have a negative Minex while the PCR is pending, but we are no longer sending the siblings home. The siblings remain in school pending that result. Thank you very much.
I got a question. Do you have a question? I do. Ms. Kelly.
I was wondering how long are the PCR results taking to come back? Negative Binax.
Negative Binax is 15 minutes. That's done right away.
And then the follow-up PCR takes
The
how long?
follow-up PCR goes over to Dominion Diagnostics in wants it. And it's been really good. We just started last week. Halfway schoolers was first on Tuesday, and they were done and in the lab by 4:30. And that night, later that night, she already had it. So.
As a parent with young children in the school system, I think it's fantastic that you're now doing symptomatic testing. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I just think it makes it easier.
It really does.
This kids still have, the students still have school.
It's just a day. It's not a trip to the testing site elsewhere in the state. So much easier.
I do. Ms. McDade, did you have one?
I do.
Come.
At our last meeting, some questions came up about when entire classes have to quarantine, and I know that doesn't happen very often. But you talked about some of the criteria that are used. Could you just walk me through what the process is at that point? Like, is this a decision that you're making on your own? Are you consulting with RIDO? What's going on?
I usually consult with her all the time. And what happens is, it's based on the age of the kids, and the exact dynamic that went on in that classroom. If it's a single student, RIDO did come out with a new exemption this year where they're allowing students, if they are 3 feet apart and wearing masks the whole time, then we can use a 3-foot criteria, and it works out really well in classrooms because most of our students are 3 feet apart. So we've been able to really keep large numbers of kids in school. Unfortunately, at the really young elementaries, they snack and lunch in their classrooms, and therefore they were without a mask for a pretty significant amount of time. So that sort of usurps the exemption, and so we have to look very carefully at what we do at that point. And that's how that handbook came up, where we're looking around the individual student or staff member who is positive and seeing who is within the 6th grade. And that's the exemption. When there are multiple cases in a classroom, we look at where the individual students are sitting. You know, if I've got multiple cases and they're all at one table, I'm not going to put the kids at tables really far away out because it's exclusive to that group. But if the multiple cases are dispersed across the classroom, then at that point, we use us to the entire classroom.
So first of all, thank you. I know you've probably lived and breathed COVID a lot more than you ever thought you would over the last 2 years, right? And all of this testing is paid for by this grant, right? That the district applied for and got.
Well,
Is that correct or pretty correct?
The grant in the state.
The grant in the state, okay.
the supplies come to us, because no charge for supplies and the testing.
And about how, I mean, are we testing, I have no clue, 500 a week, 50 a week?
Well, we just started last week.
Oh, okay.
And it took time to get it up and running. We had to wait for supplies to come in and things like that. But as of last week, we tested in the 2 elementary schools. I focused on the kids pre-K through 6, since that's the group that can't be vaccinated yet. So that's when we began. Unfortunately, I was out last week a bit, so we did manage to do both elementary schools. We tested about 200 between the 2 schools. And this week, we've already tested again at half-day school today. They're Tuesdays, tomorrow is Wednesday, and that's Melville. And then on Thursday, we're not going to do 5th and 6th grade at the middle school. So we're gradually moving up. We've only done a few symptomatic things.
Okay, so it's all pretty much asymptomatic testing.
Most of it is asymptomatic. We've done a few, very few symptomatic tests as of yet.
Okay. Mr. Ferber?
Why are only 50% of the parents willing to have their, I mean,
You know,
it seems like a pretty large number that won't.
well,
They may not know.
some people just don't, they just go about it. I mean, the numbers, I was actually encouraged. I mean, it's about 1,200 families that have given us permission to test, which I thought was great. Compared to last year we did not do those kinds of numbers. So it's encouraging that they're willing to do it. Parents were given an option for allowing their child to be asymptomatically tested, symptomatically tested, or either or. And so parents have reacted in a variety of ways. I don't have those numbers, but you know, I think half's pretty good. And the state doesn't say, you know, just because we have permission to test 1,200, obviously, we get to us test 1,200 kids a week. So they sort of want us to. Some schools are doing like one second grade each time, you know, if there's 3 second grades, it takes 3 weeks to do the whole second grade, all the children that are eligible. Luckily for us, we've been able to test at the elementary schools, each student that's parent has agreed. The numbers at the high school, there were 541 parents who agreed at the middle school and like 500 at the high school. So we probably be I can pretty much tell you that I'm not going to test those numbers, but we will take samples. There's some challenges at the high school because we don't want to pull kids out of academic time, and their schedules are so short that it's really difficult. So we're trying to do it during advisories. So we're starting with very small samples of kids how many kids we can do in that 18 minutes. So,
But it gives you a pretty good sense that it's not widespread in schools and, you know, I mean, that's very reassuring, I think, probably.
That's the whole process. That's what they want us to continue to monitor for any sort of,
Spikes.
you know, kids are asymptomatic because they can be asymptomatic.
Mr. Payot?
I just have a follow-up question to Fred's point. Can a parent, I'm exhausted. Is permission on a rolling basis?
Parents can sign up at any point that they choose to. I've left the application open for them. And not the application, the permission open for them. And they can opt out at any point. You know? And if a student says, I don't want to be tested, I mean, that's up to the parent to talk to the student. I'm not holding anybody down. You know, it's amazing. The little kindergartners, they've done a great job.
No, it's so true. And the reason I ask is because my 3-year-old, you can test every day, 3 times a day. He thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. Versus my 7-year-old, it's you have to put him in a straitjacket. But now he's getting more used to it, where I'm just like, all right, fine. Now I'm more comfortable as a parent that it's not a hassle for staff. And he can get tested. So I'm thinking about myself. Now I do want to sign him up in order to be able to get tested.
And sometimes it's a little peer pressure. You know, see like
That's
they see
true.
the other kids doing it, and you kind of feel like they need to. So it's a good thing. It works out for them.
Mr. Shears?
I was wondering, this school year, how many children have gotten to a hospital setting that far along with it?
So that is really hard information to get from Rhino. They do not.
Well, I mean, is it 5, 10, 50?
I can't give you a number. I don't know.
Well, I mean, are we testing and no one's going?
Well, we're testing them right
Oh,
now.
Yeah,
He's talking about.
yeah. Like, in other words, I was curious, I was gonna ask at the grade school level, the middle school level, and the high school, as to with the testing, how many children then, or if they've gotten sick enough that they actually had to, you know, they've gotten as far as a hospital.
I am not aware of a student that has been hospitalized in our district. Thankfully. I have heard that they do keep kids at home if at all possible. I mean, even my daughter was 41, had a pretty significant case of COVID to the point that she got the antibodies. And she stayed home the whole time. So they're very hesitant to admit people, and they're trying, and kids especially. So I can't tell you that there's a single one that I know of.
Okay, then my other question would be, what percentage, we were told, I think originally with herd immunity in the state, that if we got up to about 70%, we would be at herd immunity. The other day, if I'm right, we've gotten at least 90% that has at least one shot or 2 shots or something. So I was wondering now with that, we're still, some of us with masks, some of us not, I don't know where that is. And then now with children, and we're going through the process, we're going to be trying to give the shots and all that to them. Has there been a number at which this will end? In other words, that there's a number that as far as that it reaches that, I mean, this is great, but I'm just saying, you know, I mean, at what point are we at the other end? I mean, this is good. I mean, you know, everybody's doing this process, but I got to ask from my side, and what I'm seeing is what, because I'm looking at it, and I think you can tell where I'm coming from a little bit, and I'm also, you know, asking with this, is that how many children each year get the flu and get sick enough that they have to go to the hospital? I would like to know that, the difference. Because I compare apples to apples. We're comparing as far as tests and whatnot. And I just want to know that if we're going through all this, of where and to, you know, to what degree are we going?
I mean, those are very good questions. And, you know, I think the balance is that initially when we started out with COVID, it was so very virulent and so many people died. Certainly, you know, that we got through that. This new variant, Delta, has proven to be more transferable, and especially among kids. Now, kids luckily have done pretty well. It's not all. We do have multi-system organ failure that happens to kids. Those are the kids that end up admitted and very ill. So that's not something we ever want them to have. The long-term effects of that, you know, we don't even really know. So I wish I could give you, I don't know when the end comes. I mean, as this thing evolves, you know, we're dealing with Delta variant now. I am hearing some about a new variant that's in Europe right now. So the problem with viruses is they mutate, and they're monitoring it really, really closely because of how deadly it was initially. And all I can say is that they're trying to figure out, we don't want to drop the ball and miss it and not be able to intervene if should this thing become even more deadly than it already has been.
I should have included in my updates, just so Governor McKee continues to extend the mask mandate in K-12 schools. He's going 30 days at a time, so right now that will take us at least through the middle of November. I did just hear today that in Massachusetts, they
heard that too.
January 15th. Let's be going.
I also heard though
7 months at a time.
I also heard though that there were some communities that were saying once they reached that, I think it was Attleboro High School, that
In Massachusetts has.
in Massachusetts, if you're at 80% vaccination rate, you can apply to get rid of the mask mandate and stuff like that.
He's just going 30 days at
At a time,
and assessing, so.
Yeah, that's just does a few things differently, like
Yeah.
test and stay and that sort of thing. And Rhode Island has not moved in that
Because
direction.
They piloted it, piloting it.
This pilot in Westfield.
Right.
It's Smithfield, I believe.
Yeah.
My other comment, what I was thinking about with this is that when a child is born, that there's all sorts of germs and whatnot in the world that finally they build up an immunity to. And there are new things occurring as the years go. And as far as that, so I just question, in other words, we're saying this one's coming, that one's coming, we're doing this to this degree. So, I mean, I would just like to have, you know, where we're going through this and putting the children through it and all this, that we get to a point where we're not going over the top, you might say. Now, I don't want to make little of it because over 700,000, I understand. But I'm also saying that if there can be some kind of an end within a degree. Okay, so that's why I was asking you the question.
I think you'll find that school nurses have definitely been on the forefront of this. And I will say that, you know, my fondest dream something different. I wanted to go the way of smallpox and all. And I know that, we've dealt with immunization for a wide variety of different childhood illnesses. I remember when chickenpox, my kids had chickenpox, and then also there's a chickenpox vaccine, and you wonder. But I went to a very moving presentation about chickenpox, and I'm a big advocate of varicella vaccine as a result of that presentation. Because yes, we may get to a point where COVID is not wiping people out, but there's only, if we can prevent it, we're so much better for preventing it than having it overcome somebody and trying to fight that. Because then you're really on the war. So it's, I think we're going to see this pandemic,
Peter
take
out.
its course.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're great scientists, so I will tell you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have another question?
No, just a comment. When Alan's asking is the doctors don't even have the answer to those. I mean, this is such a new virus and the long-term effects are unknown. You could have the virus, be perfectly fine in recovery, but you've got long-term effects that are yet to be determined. And the immunity, the herd immunity, it was a CDC pronouncement that based on prior infections, the herd immunity comes in the 70 to 80% category. So the idea is to get to that point so that the unvaccinated are not the sources of variants that will not be vaccinated against. So I mean, it's still, I don't think there is an answer to your question. It's just a big mystery for the moment, and they're working on the best education they have.
Well, again, thank you very much. And I think, again, the whole Portsmouth community thanks the entire nursing staff and all the record keeping. And I'm sure your job has evolved in ways you just probably didn't want it to in a number of cases. So thank you. Thank you very much. So moving on to sprouting success in science.
Our next presentation is on the science grant that we announced recently. The district is very pleased to have received. So we have Dr. Tavares and Mrs. Margie Brennan, our PA science coach. So I'm going to turn it over to them. I did want to take the opportunity to thank Mrs. Brennan, was able to go to Washington, D.C. on behalf of the district a couple of weeks ago to receive our Green Ribbon Award. So thank you for that.
I'm going to be making this over for as well. So even though we are all still struggling in the middle of COVID, there are some really great things happening in our school. So I'm excited that we've had the opportunity this year to have these special presentations. So Margie Brennan, she's our K-8 science coach, and she's going to be presenting information on the recent grant that Dr. Kenworthy had announced that we received from the Department of Defense. We received a $500,000 grant. Margie was instrumental in writing this grant, advocating for it, and really just preparing all of the details. So I certainly couldn't do this presentation justice. So Margie, thank you.
I think we need to give you a standing ovation. Yes, yes. It's a good way to start the presentation.
That's how it works.
I do have to go back to the green ribbon. I took my daughter because everybody was too busy to come down, and although she was not, part of the staffing of it, she is part of the Zero Waste Initiative. She's part of the Poison Bag Initiative. And after the award ceremony, we had a reception. And I wish I had taken a million pictures of the way she presented herself and talked about Portsmouth. We had California, Montana, Wyoming, DC, Texas, all around her, asking her the things that we were doing in Rhode Island. And she helped herself pretty well. So she did a really amazing job. She is not an environmentalist like myself, but they definitely gave her a great perspective on the things that you can do, small changes that make a big difference. So it was pretty amazing. So here we have our wonderful, they call it DODEA grant. I've been calling it the DOD, Department of Defense. We received the $500,000. There are a couple of stakeholders in here. Liz and I are now the co-project directors. It is a very tedious grant, and there are lots of meetings. They are amazing at the DODIA level, but there is a lot of information, and Liz loves me for that part. I also wanted to say that Kathy Eller, who is from EVAC, helped me personally write the budget narrative. It was tremendously difficult, and she definitely played a large role in helping. She's very systematic, and if you would like to take a look at the breakdown of the grant, there was a narrative for the budget as well as the grant itself. Gina Childers is our external evaluator. She is a University of Texas environmental professor who actually does STEAM and agriculture. She is our independent evaluator. Through this grant, we pay her to make sure that we are meeting all the criteria and that our rubric is being met and that our goals are within the realm of sustainability. So our overall goal is to increase the student achievement in K-8 science through the MGSS Connected Sustainable Agriculture Framework. This will lay the foundation for STEAM instruction and career in high school and beyond. So this is primarily focusing on the military students. However, it benefits all of our students. Goal 1 has 3 strategies. I think I must say there's a page right before that. 2 goals.
Goal 1 and 2 come up.
Goal 1, 2, and then the timeline after that.
Yeah, those are the strategies of the goals. So the goal 1, go back to goal 1. Goal 1 is to take a look at our testing and how we are doing in our education. So we have 3 strategies that we're going to do to meet that goal 1. The first one is train the trainers to implement all 3 dimensions of the MGSS to improve science instruction as indicated by grade level MGSS through pre and post assessments. We will do that through train the trainer programs and summer institutes for professional development for our 43 teachers from K to 8. Strategy 2 was using classroom observation, teacher reflection, modeled instruction, and reviews of student data through the year to improve our instruction and inform and revise our future professional development. We have 5 years of professional development through this grant. Strategy 3 is to increase student engagement and achievement in all science with drones, environmental probeware, outdoor magnetic walls for elementary schools, the outdoor classroom, gardening, and agriculture connections. So really making sure that the kids are seeing connections outside of the classroom with our community. Goal 2 is really working on STEAM and career readiness for high school and beyond. And how we're going to do that is our 4th strategy is engaging students in real world application in the community by developing a scope and sequence for an embedded sustainable program using local nonprofit organizations that connect with MGSS standards, which will include at least 1 field trip per year for each grade for K to 8 for the next 5 years. Strategy 5 is to create school-wide after-school STEAM programs, science nights, annual STEAM festivals to share student success with the community. That is in hopes of getting 4-H, community garden classes, farm to table. I mentioned the STEAM drones, which is really cool. Some other great programs. And of course, we have to kind of handle that with kick-ups with COVID right now, but right now we're in a planning year, so hopefully next year things will start to develop. So again, I just mentioned it's a 5-year grant from now till next summer. It's a planning year. There's a lot of planning involved. Starting in actually August of 2022, we started our summer institute, and then our full implementation year will start in the fall of 2022 within the school year. Everything's embedded. So during the school year, hopefully there will be no additional time for teachers to do anything will be on us. We got some fun things that I had to point out. So at the elementary levels, we got the outdoor magnetic boards, which will help with all different types of levels of science. We've got weather stations, the elementary starter laboratory science station, steam drones, 10 iPads for each school, and field trips for every grade for 4 years. 4 years, they will let me do it this year, so. Because of COVID, so I understand. Middle school, we got a middle school starter lab science station that's, it's looking at, it's probeware so that we can look at light and temperature and soil samples and really turn it into graphical type data to help us understand looking at science through a different lens, which is something that we have been trying to get a little bit more into with our students with MGSS. We have steam drones, iPads, that's supposed to say it's beehive observation, and field trips for every grade from 5 to 8 as well. The field trips are not just fun field trips, they are also educational. So my job between now and next year is to be working with the vision committee to develop embedded instruction. So for example, 3rd grade looks at structure and function. We would work with Save the Bay to embed the lessons into our science classes. And then this way, it's not just an extra field trip. It would be going to Save the Bay, and it would be something that they would be learning to do. So we're hoping to take each of the outside organizations and tying them into a grade for the next 5 years.
Pause. It's further.
What's a steam drone?
A steam drone is, it's a coding drone. So first you have to learn how to code. And then the drone itself, when you use it, it actually uses topography. And so you can do lots of different things with it. So there's science, technology, education, engineering, and you can do smart and math. So you can collect data with it, you can graph. Lots of different things.
Why do they call it a steam drone?
Because you can do.
Oh, steam, oh, I got it now.
Steam powered.
Now I remember, we used to talk about steam.
Right, well, things you need to know about.
Right, right.
engines and-
That's very exciting. Very, very exciting. Are there other questions? Mr. Shears?
I was wondering, is there any thought, or are you getting into anything with coordination between green energy and also the growth of whether they're fields or and the implications with irrigation? And then are you doing any kind of growing where there isn't any water, where that type? I'm just asking with all these different issues.
Well, you know me, I'm already ahead of you.
Yeah.
I've already contacted Tyler Angers. He's the engineering teacher up at the high school. He's actually going to be working with the students to come down to the Portsmouth Ag farm and develop a solar powered rain catchment system. We're also hoping that the Project Lead the Way can work with our students at the high school down at the ag farm to work on irrigation systems. So I actually am hoping for another grant in a month that will tie into all of this and then bring it all together and bring in more technology.
Is it another?
It's not on wood.
Is it another $500,000?
It's only needs 70, but my fingers are crossed. I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, because the solar tanks, as far as powering like water tanks and the irrigation and instead of that way. And
So all of this is a 5-year plan, and the hopes is that we can start taking, and I know Lisa Goodwin and Mr. Ruda have worked on the 21st century class, and a lot of that is in connection with our CTE program. So we are really aware of making that environmental connection to our community and the jobs that are coming up in the world. And this grant will help us work with a team of teachers outside of the school day. And it gives them a stipend so that it's something that they're working hard to be accountable for. But it will embed all of those ideas of building that framework for STEAM-related jobs and career readiness before we get up to the high school.
That's
Which
great.
is why it's a K-8. So it's a building block, and of course, you know, it takes time. But that's exactly the whole premise is we need to start with green energy. And I feel like this is actually why it's an agriculture base.
And how we can grow up here in the north versus with the limitations sometimes of the weather versus down in the south and various.
Our ag had a rain day on Monday, and we actually just talked about the difference of the Dust Bowl and the potato famine.
Good,
And the other one we talked about, but they're very aware that the environment plays a big role in our food production. So I feel like we're on the right track.
And it's, you know, when I think back to our previous strategic plan, you know, we had this embed STEAM in the K-12 and it's really, I mean, you're really making it come to life right here, you know, so it gets.
Well, in our elementary schools, Mrs. Lori and Mrs. Will have put the school gardens into their schools. So the kids have already started working on it at the elementary level before we have this grant. But K-4H program is working its way into hopefully when we get after school programming, and that will let the kids also get into the other areas that we're not tackling in the school day.
Are the science kits aligned to this at all? I mean, are we still using the kits from?
We have them. We have the FOSS kits. We're using a hybrid of FOSS and Mystery Science due to the influx of time with the COVID restrictions with school last year. The instructional time for science was definitely a challenge for prep, and getting work out there for the kids to do hands-on, to work with partners. So we are in the process of looking at new curriculum and realigning our framework for our science curriculum for K-12, because our legislation has us by 2025 following a curriculum that is ed reports, and right now FOSS does not is not ed reports.
So the,
After we finish our process right now with our ELA,
We're
what's next?
science is up next. But they aren't doing the hands-on experiment this year?
They are.
Oh, good. Oh, because I think they really enjoy that.
Oh,
Yeah, much more than,
definitely just don't want to give them a fun-filled activity. There has to be some.
Sure.
wonderful inquiry.
sure, no, congrats. Okay, Ms. Ferber.
I just want to say, you're such a whirlwind of energy. It's amazing. The fact that you landed here at Portsmouth is so, I mean, the auditorium, there's the ag innovation, it's just amazing. I mean, and hopefully you're enjoying yourself.
You know, sometimes I feel like I can't keep up with this. But sometimes she tells me to calm down too, so I know.
I'm not telling you to calm down.
She's gonna be my partner.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate it. All right, now to the less intriguing part of the agenda here. We're going to have to break these in two because there's going to be a number of people that are going to need to excuse for the
Same for the 18th.
the 18th, which was the bond forum. So can I have a motion for October 14th minutes, please?
I move that the minutes of both the public session and the executive session minutes of, I'm sorry,
Just the public.
just the public meeting minutes of October 14th be approved.
For
Second.
any emissions corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous 7-0. Motion for the 18th, please.
I move that the minutes of the October 18th community forum be approved.
Second.
Okay, we're going to have some abstentions here. So first, all those in favor be yes, okay, and abstentions. For approvals, Copeland, Ferber, Vadney, and Piero, and three abstentions, McDade, Kelly, and Shears. Thank you very much. So moving on to business.
Consent agenda.
I'm sorry, consent agenda, skip that. Can I have a motion?
I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, 7-0. Now moving on to business, please.
I move for the discussion of the facilities capital plan and the upcoming bond.
It's a discussion. Dr. Kenworthy?
Madam Chair, so just one business item this evening is just a discussion item, as we've been doing, and this is obviously our last meeting before next Tuesday's referendum vote on November 2nd. So just on my end, some updates. And we've already debriefed on the community forum. A few other things. So I did see the school committee letter to the editor appearing in some publications this week. I also wrote one that is starting to appear. And this afternoon, I was on the Ruth Newberry show on W80K radio for a segment, question and answers on the bond projects.
Did they have call-in? Call-in question?
They
No?
did not.
Okay, well.
Probably for
Ruth was very well informed about the projects. We asked some very good questions.
Okay,
So, yeah, we're leading up to the election day on November 2nd. Right now, early voting continues to be open here, right here in the town hall chambers during regular business hours. Mail-in ballots are being accepted for people who applied to vote that way. And then on the November 2nd day, next Tuesday, there will be 4 polling locations here again at Portsmouth Town Hall, Portsmouth High School, and Portsmouth Middle School are polling locations.
Prudence Island.
Easy there, and there's a site on Prudence Island as well for those residents there.
all right.
Everything that I had for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Reports were, I know Mr. Duro couldn't make it tonight. Are you reading the report, the first page, the financials?
You have in your backup, Mr. Duro has submitted the September 2021 financials. So on the revenue side, there was an expenditure of $9,771,876. I'm sorry, revenues consisting mostly of town appropriation and state aid. While on the expenditure side, through September, expenditures were $6,301,491. There's some additional details there. No transfers in or out, and his overall summary, which you have the detailed back before, is that so far through September of FY22, we are on budget.
Great. So if any committee member has a specific question, feel free to,
Okay, I have a question.
do you have a question to ask, or we can?
Yes, I think Tom may be able to answer this, and this does with textbooks, non-public. Do we also provide textbooks to the homeschoolers?
So we do upon request, anything that we provide for private school families that we're obligated to provide, we would have to provide to homeschool families if those parents request it. A lot of times what we find is for homeschool families, they're following, these days it's an online curriculum or something that they're doing on their own. So we don't get very many requests, I don't believe, from homeschool families, but we would be obligated to fulfill those requests.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are going to adjourn into executive session. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Our next meeting will be November 16th. And that will still be in town hall because they're not expecting it to be closed, right, for repairs?
The work, if everything stays on schedule, the upgrades to town hall are taking place after our next meeting, but before the December meeting.
Awesome.
I will be able to provide an update if everything is on schedule.
Great. Can I have a motion, please, to go back into executive session?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
right?
All right, so we'll be going back into executive session. Thank you all for the reports and coming. Couple minute break.
Yes, leave that to-
How's everything in Little Compton?